Armed Dragon, the archetype I was most excited for making a video about from the latest pack, and the video I was least excited about reading the comment section for, because I know this comment section is going to be filled with so many deep and insightful, meaningful messages that are definitely going to be talking about the content of the video. I hope you guys know I actually haven't seen the anime. Oh, come on, guys. Everyone knows it fell off after the first DN World. Come on. So here's today's deck list. Now just a reminder before getting to the deck list, if you guys are enjoying today's video and want to see more content just like this in the future, especially if you're a returning viewer, so apparently about 35% of you are watching this or even subscribed to the channel, meaning 65% of you haven't even clicked that button yet. So if you guys are interested in seeing more content from me in the future, especially some more new pack content or new box content, as I have a whole bunch of videos planned, things like your Monarchs, your Deep Sea Divas, your Necros, basically anything else that's left in that pack, I'm still planning to make videos on. So if you're interested in seeing any of that content, remember to leave a like on this video and consider subscribing to the channel down below. Alright, let's get into this deck list. So this deck list, honestly, the entire extra deck, you can just delete it. I think I went into one monster one time with this deck. Everything else in here, you can just delete. It's all about the main deck. And this deck is just incredibly explosive. It's basically designed for going second most of the time, and going first, it's not awful, but it's not the best. Its probably main weakness is the fact that going first, your main setup is just sort of one quick effect pop, and if you draw Book of Moon, that's nice. Otherwise, yeah, you haven't really got a whole lot going for you. That's probably the main weakness for the deck. But its going second is incredibly explosive. It will end on like 3K bodies and have just nuked your opponent's field God knows how many times. Alright, so as every card in here is fairly new, I'll give you a brief rundown on just how this deck list functions. So your main starter for the deck is your Thunder level 3, and this card is searchable or special summonable via your Armed Dragon Flash. This card, basically, you can activate its effect to then send one monster from your hand to the graveyard and itself, to then special summon out your level 5 straight from the deck. And if this card is ever sent to the graveyard via one of your dragon effects, you get a card draw. Likewise, your level 5 just sends a monster from hand to the graveyard, summons out your level 7, and if this card is ever sent to the graveyard via one of your other dragon effects, you get a search from your deck list. Likewise again, your level 7, exact same thing, only it can now summon out the level 10 and get a search for, I think, any armed dragon card, whereas this card can only search for your level 5 or higher wind dragon monsters. So the main advantage of this card's search is you can grab your dark armed dragon as well. Then we have your boss monster for the deck, your Armed Dragon Thunder level 10. This card has a whole bunch of text, but you don't really need to worry about much of it. All you need to know is during your opponent's turn, as a quick effect, you can send one card from your hand to the graveyard to target any card in the field and just destroy it. It's also going to be immune to battle, and it's also going to be unable to have its control switched, so your opponent can't activate Crackdown and take control of it. It's just immune to that. Other than that, the rest of the text just sort of bleh. It does gain 1000 attack when it destroys a card. I guess that's sort of relevant. And the other boss monster for the deck is your Armed Dragon level 10 white. This card cannot be normal summoned or set, must be special summoned by its own effect. You can banish an armed dragon monsters from your field and or graveyard whose total levels equal 10, special summon this card from your hand, then add one to White Veil from your deck to your hand. Normally I wouldn't run this card because I don't think it's actually all that great, but it's a pretty damn good card when you have a skill that can search for it, meaning it does lead to a lot of lethals fairly often. Basically, this card also means you can't take effect damage, and at the start of the damage step, if this card attacks, you can destroy one card on the field. Alright, next up we have the actual skill. So the skill itself is a lot more text. Basically, this skill allows you to send one monster from your hand to the graveyard, and in doing so, add one level monster from your deck to your hand, and add 4 different armed dragon monsters and White Veil to your deck from outside of your deck. So a lot of randomish stuff there, but doesn't really matter too much. All you need to know is that the second part, after you've already searched for a card, is it will allow you to take a couple of monsters from your deck, chuck them straight in the graveyard, then take 3 monsters in your graveyard, or up to 3 monsters, and change them into dark, which is very important, because it now means you'll be able to put 3 dark monsters in the graveyard to be able to special summon out, of course, your dad, which, as you guys probably know, if you have exactly 3 dark monsters in your graveyard, you can slam this guy on the field, then you can banish 1 dark monster from your graveyard, target 1 card on the field and destroy it, and it's not a once per turn, so you can just use this card 3 times, pop 3 cards on the field, or if you have multiple dads in hand, you can just slam out multiple copies of them and then do your popping, so very powerful effects. And that's basically it for the deck list, because like I said, the extra deck doesn't matter whatsoever, and the actual cards you get from the skill also don't really matter at all, other than the fact you just add a white veil to your hand, which you'll see what that does during the gameplay anyway. Alright, so today I've got 7 replays to share with you guys. Now just like yesterday, I'm going to apologise in advance as they were all gathered inside King of Games, meaning some of the quality of these replays isn't exactly the highest it possibly could have been. I did gather quite a few decent replays, but when you're in a format where at the top there's literally no demotion, meaning everyone up there is playing a lot of interesting deck lists to say the least, some of which playing suicide decks, some playing just absolute garbage meme stuff like Ojama tier level of shit, it's kind of hard to get decent replays. But I did find quite a lot of decent top tier deck lists, as you'll see during some of these replays, so hopefully I got quite enough to sort of convince you on how good this deck list is. But also, it's really hard for me to determine how good the deck list is when I'm playing against all that garbage, so the deck to me feels like it's pretty good, but not good enough to be like a top tier deck. It might be able to sneak a few tournament top cards here and there, but that's about it. I don't really see it being anything better than that. It's definitely coggable, but that's sort of like a bare minimum at this point, so I don't know. The deck list has like a fairly not the greatest turn 1 when you're having so little back row and you're sort of relying on just one monster, which could get Book of Moons or Chalice at any point, and you're going second whilst being pretty goddamn strong. Doesn't actually have any follow-up if you don't kill your opponent during that turn. You just sort of all in, try to kill your opponent. If they stop you, you don't really have a whole lot of follow-up unless you just pray to top deck something. Because even if you top deck another Dark Arms, you can't even summon it because you've already banished all your resources in grave. So it doesn't really do anything outside of that explosive turn. So it's fairly glass cannon-y. Its turn 1 isn't that great, and for that reason, I think it's going to be sort of a rogue level deck list that might be able to steal some top cuts here and there. Definitely coggable, but nothing more than that. That's my opinion on the deck anyway. Alright, let's get into these replays though. So I did try to gather a few against some fairly top tierish deck lists. There will be a few meme replays in here obviously, because it's impossible to get only top tier decks on the ladder at the moment inside a cog. But I did try to gather a few sort of decent ones. Such as Code Talker Salad is a pretty decent deck, so that's what we're up against. Alright, Signet Mining, searching for his debug. We can fast forward some of this because there's a bunch of salady, code talkery stuff, which you've all seen a billion times. I think it ends on a whole lot though, just sort of ends on a... I don't even think it ends on the what's it called? The Code Talker back row card. I don't even even ends on that. Also, you also notice, by the way, I currently have no extra deck. It's because at the very start, I kind of forgot to add it. This deck doesn't really use its extra deck, like, ever. Sometimes, very rarely, you might go into the rank 7 that can pop cards, which I only ever went into, I think, one time, because I was against a Necros player, and I wanted to have it set up after he activates that hand trap that protects himself from dying. And I still lost that game anyway, because I forgot to set a card and lost to Trishula. But anyway. Yeah, so yeah, you don't really need an extra deck for this deck, but I added some after the, in future replays you'll see I actually added the extra deck. I just kind of forgot for the first couple. That's something else I wanted to complain about with this deck list. Why didn't they add an animation for the new cards? Like, I've only seen the animation one time for Armed Dragon when playing this deck, because I just randomly summoned it just because I felt like it. And you won't see that, by the way, because there wasn't any decent replays. But yeah, I thought it was really dumb. They should have added a new animation, or at least one new animation for some of the new cards. But anyway, alright, so I'm summoning out my level 3. Level 3 can now get rid of one of my cards in hand, to then special summon out a level 5 from deck. And because we sent the level 5 then gets a search. You'll notice when you're sending your level cards, you're going to get effects from them, whether that be a search or a drawing in the case of the level 3. They're generally pretty goddamn decent effects. So searching level 7, solving this guy out, bringing out the other level 7, which now searches for the level 3. And finally, level 3 will give us a draw. Didn't hit anything in particular, but yeah, sure, whatever. Searching for the white using our skill, changing 3 cards in our graveyard to dark for the summoning requirements for our dad. Summoning dad, he's going to pop a card on the field, summoning another boss monster, searching for white veil. We already know what this back row is, otherwise we would have destroyed it sooner with this card. And you're just going to see because you know he's very, very dead there. Because I still have one pop from dad I hadn't used yet. Alright, next up. So you can already see from that duel alone, 3 gigantic boss monsters just slammed on the field. This deck does have an explosive going second play, which does win a lot of games, But yeah, if you don't kill your opponent on that turn, your follow-up is basically non-existent. Especially when you're playing a build like me where I've only got 2 copies of level 3, so it's kind of hard to have like extra follow-up because you actually have no way to have the starter again. But anyway, alright, so I got kind of lucky here. I opened 2 books. Going first, opening back row feels so goddamn good. Because if you don't open the back row, you're just relying on 1 monster, which is not the safest play. Alright, here I actually went for a bit of a risky draw here from this guy. I was just kind of hoping to high roll. Kind of missed, but it's fine because my skill can just search anyway. And just discard 1 dad, doesn't really matter too much. Especially considering the skill thankfully allows you to choose up to 3 dark monsters engraved, or 3 monsters turned into dark monsters. So I just turn only 2 of them and keep the dad in the graveyard because he's dark already. Alright, summons the 2 dudes, gets his chase. So very easy in this play. We want to make sure both these cards are face down, so if we don't hit the trap card, obviously he can't activate it still because he has no monsters on the field, because that requires you to have S-Force monsters. So I'm just going to pop one of the back row and then Book and Moon the 2 others. And we already know from there we have guaranteed lethal because we can search for our dad, thanks to the fact we added this card to our hand at the end of the turn last turn for a discard fodder from this dude. It's very important to note, by the way, using your skill, it's very important sometimes. If you're going to end your turn, it's good to search for cards that are good discards, rather than searching for the cards you want to search for the next turn. So for in this case, obviously I searched for a copy of the level 7, so I can discard it during his turn to use my effect, to then search for my dad, rather than just immediately searching for dad with my skill, because then I would have had to discard this card and that would have felt like shit, so. Alright, hopefully that made some sense. I don't really... Yeah, hopefully that made some sense. Alright, Mr. Icy Gamers. Oh, God. What a name. Alright. So our opponent was playing Hero. I think this guy only got a Super Poly was his only back row. And I nearly misplayed pretty badly in this one. If it wasn't Super Poly, I would have been a bit of spot of bother. Alright, and I'll point out why I messed up in a second when we actually get to it. This guy does a bunch of hero-y stuff, blah 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 blah. And sets his 1 card. So first thing we do, summoning out our flash. Let's get our dude on field. We don't really care if our opponent removes this because we have our 2 follow-ups in hand. But he chooses not to, so I'm like, alright, we'll just keep summoning out some other dudes. Searching for our level 7. Swapping this guy out for a copy of our other level 7. I could have actually grabbed the other armed dragon here and discarded and tried to nuke the field, but there wasn't actually a discard that was high enough to beat over these guys, so it was kind of pointless. At least I thought it was pointless, so I was like, yeah, I won't bother with that one. Searching for our armed dragon. Alright, grabbing our level 3 because we want to discard that, making 3 darks engrave. Summoning out a level 10. Drawing a card. Alright, and then I summoned my dad, and what I should have done here is immediately summoned the other one. Because then I activated this card's effects and I thought, holy shit, I just made it so that I can't summon my other one, because you need exactly 3 in graveyard to do it. So it's like, oh shit, I nearly messed up here. But thankfully, this was Super Poly, so nice guy. Puts another dark in the graveyard for me. Yeah, nice lad, gave me an extra dark so I could summon another one. His whole field's about to disappear. And finally, we can summon white. Search for your, the card. I don't even know if he even remains in the duel. He doesn't even concede, just actually just takes it. Alright. Next up we have... I think this is actually a replay where I have an extra deck now. I'm pretty sure at this point I actually added an extra deck. I don't even know if I had one in the last replay, I forget. Oh yeah, so I saved this replay because it was the only time I sort of did a niche different play to your normal stuff, so I decided to save it anyway, despite it being a fairly shit replay. I just saved it because it had a really niche thing that I don't normally do with this deck. Alright, double book because obviously I'm a god gamer. Who needs to run loads of back row when you can just open loads of back row? Alright, level 7, swapping over, getting a level 10, adding a copy to our hand, grabbing a good discard, and we're good to go. Passing the turn. Fossil Dig, grabbing his raptor. He tries to do a bunch of TG stuff, but TG, they're a little bit outdated right now, especially with all the books and chalices flying around. So I'm going to be booking Mooney as one tuner monster. Now he has 2 monsters that aren't tuners, so he's kind of like, oh well. Hobby's 1 back row, getting a search, we have Dad. Now all we need to do is draw any monster, and we hit a spell card. So I'm like, well this sucks. I could try to sort of activate my skill and do some other stuff here so I get a level 3 in the deck, and then this card's sort of active. I'm like, I can't even be bothered, I'll just wait a turn. I've still got Player Disruption. I was like, I'll just draw a monster next turn, right? Surely I'll just draw a monster so I can use my skill so I can actually summon this card. Nope. So I was like, fuck it, I'll do something more fun instead. So I send my dad to the graveyard, searching for this level 5. Basically so that I can get level 3 in the deck list thanks to the skill. Because obviously I'm actually, you'll notice both these dudes are in the graveyard because I don't own a 3rd one currently, so I'm currently not playing a 3rd copy of this. So I use the skill to get level 3 in the deck instead, the other level 3. Set these 2. Gonna once again stop my opponent doing anything by popping this card, giving a search, grabbing our dude. Waiting. And then during my standby phase, I'm gonna activate my flash, summoning the level 3. Level 3, during the standby phase, gets to swap over, grabbing the other dude. So I can pop cards on the field using it, and I top to deck this Dark Arm Dragon, I'm pretty sure. And he's dead. So yeah, that was just a random interaction which showed off the fact you can use these little guys if you want to. Generally you don't use these cards like ever though. That was just randomly I decided to use it because it was like fun. Yeah, you don't normally use those guys. Nice, this was another Pendulum player, I assume? There's definitely a couple of Pendulum replays in here. Thankfully, I don't think any of them were playing the Orcust variants, or if they were, they didn't draw into their Orcust packages, so... I think against actual Orcust decks, I have a 0% win rate with this particular deck. I don't think I beat a single Orcust with it. It's kind of hard to deal with the Dingisu protecting from destruction, and deal with the 30,000 back row those decks run. This deck can definitely play through a couple of back row, or a couple of disruptions, but they have like monster on the field, 15 back row, you're not going to get through that, and you have no follow-up, so there's no sort of grind game to try to get through it all, so... Probably the main weakness of this deck. Alright, easy Book of Moon. Summon our dude, I think he negates this one, don't really care too much. We still got our discard off, so we still get a search. Grabbing a card that we just want to send to graveyard with the skill. Grabbing our white. Making a bunch of darks engraved, summoning our dad. Popping, negated. Again, doesn't really matter too much. Because it's not like this guy's going to have any scales left anyway. Because thankfully he didn't draw Pendulum Cool. The miracle that a Pendulum player doesn't draw Pendulum Cool. Alright, so you can always back row, hit him in the face, and he's gone. Alright. Well, apparently I actually have to call the replays there, because for some reason these last two, they don't actually finish. They get stuck at a certain point, and the replay bugs out and just freezes. I don't really know what's going on there, but I have no real reason to, no way to solve it. I've deleted the replays and resaved them, but for some reason they don't work, so unfortunately, we'll have to end the video there. But hopefully I've shown you guys just enough about what this deck list does, so you've got a good idea of just how good it is, and whether or not you want to try it out, so yeah. Thank you guys for watching, hopefully you enjoyed the video. I have a whole bunch of other videos planned around the latest pack coming up over the upcoming days, so if you want to see any of those replays, or any of those videos, things on like Monarchs or Necros, remember to leave a like on this video and consider subscribing, and yeah, thank you guys for watching, hope to see you in the next one, laters.
Hey, big brother, can I watch SpongeBob? Shut up, Mokuba. I'm busy flagging YouTube videos to compensate for the fact that I have an extremely small penis. Oh.